You are listening to an interview with clinical hypnotherapist Dr. Steve G. Jones. For a free hypnosis download, please visit stevegjones.com.
Hi everyone, this is Alicia with the Love Detox, Break Love Addiction, choose the right guy, and create the relationship you really want. And today we are joined by Dr. Steve G. Jones. He is a world-famous hypnotherapist, and he is going to teach us quite a bit today. Thank you, Dr. Jones, for joining us.
Oh, Alicia, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, before we jump in, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be a hypnotherapist and what kind of work do you do? How does hypnotherapy, how can it affect our lives?
Sure. Well, I became a hypnotherapist because I was in high school and I was bored. I was sent to military school, Riverside Military Academy in Gainesville, Georgia, and I didn't like it much. I was always looking for an escape, so I found a mental escape in a book called The Complete Guide to Hypnosis by a PhD psychologist named Leslie LeCron. So I started reading that and hypnotizing my roommates. We're all stuck there in military school after all. And so after a little while, the smart kids came to me wanting to study more efficiently, wanting me to hypnotize them to study more efficiently. The athletes came to me wanting me to hypnotize them to exercise more efficiently and start winning. And so all these years later, that was in the early 80s when I was in high school, all these years later, I'm still doing the same thing, except the smart kids are NASA and the athletes are the Dodgers. And to answer your question about how it helps us, well, it helps us by relaxing us into a very peaceful state of mind called alpha, and then we receive positive suggestions there that allow us to make changes in our lives.
And what kind of changes? So I've heard of hypnotherapy being really effective for things like stopping smoking or for increasing like exercising habits. What's the range of things that hypnotherapy can help us to deal with?
Well, hypnotherapy is good for anything in which the subconscious mind is involved, which is pretty much anything. I'm not able to think of anything really, any change we'd want to make where the subconscious mind doesn't get involved, meaning our old programming from the past that we need to change. So we're talking about things like weight loss, motivation, overcoming fear of flying, becoming more confident, getting better grades by applying yourself more, and anything else you can think of, really.
And with hypnotherapy, can it be used? So I know a lot of women and men who are listening, they're listening because they want to create better relationships in their lives, and they realize that either they're holding on to something from the past or they have certain triggers that come up in relationships that really destroy the partnership that they've been building. Can hypnotherapy help to address that? Or do you have any examples of how hypnotherapy can work for that?
Oh, sure. A lot of it is just, as you alluded to, the old programs where, sometimes people tend to attract the same thing. I mean, I've talked to people year after year, some acquaintances, and they'll tell me one year they found the love of their lives. It's probably their soulmate, and they're going to be together forever. Next year they have a different person. It's the love of their lives. It's their soulmate. They're going to be together forever. The following year they found the love of their lives. It's a different person, and they're going to be together forever. So they have a cycle where they keep repeating it. What they're not realizing about the cycle is it has a beginning, middle, and end, and then it repeats itself, just like any cycle does. And they need to change that if they want to do things differently. If they want different results, they've got to do things differently. So one of the ways hypnotherapeutic help comes in is to just really help them get clear, first of all, on what they really want. I mean, it's possible they don't really want to be in a relationship, or at least not long term. Maybe they just think they do, but they really don't. And it's also possible they really do want that, but they just don't know how to go about doing it because their old programs are in there. So in an example like that, where we're clearing out old programs, we would just work on that, letting go of that, letting go of whatever causes them to cling to that, and then putting in new programs, new suggestions, painting the future that they want, because the future they're getting in that scenario is one of repetition and not really going anywhere, going in circles. And the one that they at least say they want, is one that continues onward and grows and becomes more beautiful and amazing over time with that one person. So I would use something called future pacing, which is a neurolinguistic programming technique, an NLP technique, which is simply having them look at the future, the compelling, wonderful, amazing future, 10 years out, for example, where they're still with that same person.
And does it ever happen that they look at, when they're 10 years from now, they're still with that same person, and if that person is not a good fit for them, will that keep them in a relationship then through the hypnotherapy?
No, I don't think it would. You mean if I program them to be with the same person that turns out to be a terrible, horrible, abusive person somehow, and they're not able to break out of that relationship because they've been programmed to be with them? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I know a lot of times when people hear, hypnosis, we have this idea in our head of what happens on TV, where you're going to make someone do something that they don't want to do, like quack like a duck or something like that. So where does our free will come in when it comes to hypnosis?
Well, it comes in every step of the way, because the whole thing that they're being programmed for is to do something that's good for them. So if that relationship starts to not be good for them, then they would, of course, get out of it or make some changes, or at least make their needs known. But what they wouldn't do is continue to leave good people, because sometimes people find good people and they feel they're not worthy of it. And so they just get out of the relationship. So they'd stop doing negative things and they'd start doing positive things. And sometimes positive things do include leaving a person. But to answer your question about the myths about hypnosis, yeah, people think you can be put into a coma in hypnosis, which is not true. People think you'll blindly obey the commands of the hypnotherapist and do things against your morals. Neither of those things are true either.
And I've been hypnotized before. It was years ago, and it was a really great experience. But it was for something so very subtle that it was almost unnoticeable, the results. So if there's someone who comes to you and they are, for example, going through just an awful, terrible, traumatic breakup, and all they want to do is, they know that it's over. They want to let it go, but they're having trouble letting it go. They want to make that big shift. Is that possible with hypnosis, or is it always going to be more of those subtle changes like I've experienced?
Oh, it's possible, and it's definitely possible to, when you say is something possible with hypnosis, absolutely. I'll always say yes to that. It is possible. Whether it's likely or not just depends on the individual and their circumstances. There could be a lot of social factors that we're not aware of that could strongly influence this. So as with anything, it's multifactorial, meaning there are a lot of different things affecting it. But yes, I've seen that over and over. We even have a recording that helps women overcome bad relationships. Bad meaning not working for them, not benefiting them. It could be bad in the sense that they just don't like it and don't know how to say goodbye. It could be bad in the sense that they're being abused. All of that I consider bad. It's just different parts of the spectrum. So yes, hypnosis can actually help someone get out of a bad relationship.
Okay. And is there a way to tell, or I guess the real question is everyone able to be hypnotized? Can anyone be hypnotized, or is it just certain people you have to be open to it, or you have to have some sort of awareness in order for hypnosis to really sink into your subconscious and to start to rewire your brain so you can make those changes that you desire to make?
Well, everyone can be hypnotized, and Harvard and Stanford created scales for this. The hypnotic scale of susceptibility, for example, is a very practical self-assessment test that anyone can do. You can look it up online, the Harvard scale of susceptibility, and you can administer it to yourself. You just do it. You just follow along and do what it says, and then you get a numeric value for how suggestible you are. So I look at suggestibility, hypnotic suggestibility, like electrical conductivity. Every substance on the planet will conduct electricity. Some do it really well, like metal. Some do it very poorly, like wood. Likewise, every human on the planet is suggestible or susceptible, as the studies call it, to some degree. It's just a matter of how suggestible they are. So if someone's not very suggestible, that's where things like hypnosis recordings come in, because you can listen to the same recording every night, put yourself into hypnosis every night for 21 nights in a row, and allow that change to happen. So no matter if you're a little suggestible or highly suggestible, there's a way that hypnosis through repetition can get through to your subconscious mind and allow you to make the changes you want to make.
So repetition can help if you are one of those people where it's a little bit harder to break through in that first session. So with the recordings, that it has to be repeated. You said 21 days is the ideal amount?
Exactly. It's kind of like with my yes, it is, by the way. And it's kind of like when my parents, told me to do things as a kid. They said I was hard-headed, and some things they needed to tell me over and over. So sometimes because of just the way we are, it's nothing to do with IQ or anything like that, or how smart or dumb someone is. Nothing like that. But we just are different than each other. We vary in slight ways. So some people are very suggestible, some people are a little bit suggestible, some people are, right in the middle. Most people are average, as with anything else. So what we find is that repetition makes up the difference. Just like your parents telling you something over and over, you finally get it, you finally listen. Well, it turns out that works perfectly well with hypnosis as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us, is it possible for us to, or do you do this for yourself? Do you self-hypnotize, or do you instead prefer to go to a professional and be hypnotized yourself? Because I know you've done so many recordings. Do you use your own recordings? Or can we do it for ourselves?
Well, both. I mean, I use my own recordings and I make some personal ones for myself sometimes. I don't suggest that people just talk themselves through hypnosis, because a good hypnosis session is a half hour to an hour long, and it's very relaxing. So if you're hypnotizing yourself, if you're saying, now I'm drifting deeper and deeper, and you happen to fall asleep, which is fine if someone else is hypnotizing you. But if you're hypnotizing yourself, then both the hypnotherapist and the subject have both fallen asleep because of the same person. So I recommend making a recording for yourself. Now, if you fall asleep to that, that's fine, because there are plenty of studies that show that we can still take in information as we sleep. For example, when you hear a phone ring when you're sleeping, it may become part of your dream. You wake up later and you realize, oh, the phone actually did ring. That's recorded information going into your brain. So it doesn't matter if you fall asleep, as long as you're listening to a recording and not attempting to hypnotize yourself in that moment.
Okay, and I've always wondered about that as well, because there are so many hypnosis recordings that you can find online, and then it's almost a struggle to completely stay awake while you're doing them, because they are half an hour to an hour long, and you're very relaxed, but you don't have to be awake and conscious, or does it make a difference? Is it better if you just go ahead and fall asleep while you're being hypnotized?
It is. It is better. It's not necessary, though, because the lightest state of hypnosis is alpha. You can be an alpha when you're driving a car, reading a book, watching TV, when you just wake up and you're just going to sleep, vacuuming, showering. Anytime you're doing something that you really know how to do and you don't have to pay attention to it, you're doing it by what we call rote. You can kind of space out a little bit. Or when you're naturally kind of spacing out a little bit, as in when you're falling asleep or waking up. During all those times, you're in alpha, the lightest state of hypnosis. So you're still aware of everything that's going on. You don't have to be out of it. But if you go to the deeper states, such as theta and delta, which are also sleep states, and keep in mind the sleep scale is no different from the hypnosis scale. They're the same scale. So you go deeper to sleep, you go deeper into hypnosis. It's not necessary, but it's a little bit better, I think, because you aren't analyzing it anymore. People tend to analyze what's being said. I know Dr. Steve G. Jones is telling me I'm confident right now, but I also know I'm really not confident. So you see how you can work against it by analyzing it. When you go to sleep, also when you go into the deeper states of hypnosis, same thing, you lose that capacity to consciously analyze what's being said, and it just goes in.
You are listening to an interview with clinical hypnotherapist Dr. Steve G. Jones. For a free hypnosis download, please visit stevegjones.com.
Definitely. I remember, because I listened to one of your recordings yesterday, actually, and you were describing a scene to get everyone relaxed about, being above a park and in a balcony, and I was really, really into it. And then you said that kids were going to school, and then I thought, I was imagining this at night, and your mind starts taking over, and it took me complete out of relaxation because I wanted to get the scene right. I wanted to get it right and follow the direction.
Oh,
Do you
goodness.
find that happens a lot with people where they're like, which detail should I focus on now?
That does happen from time to time with very analytical, skeptical, engineering type people, or even lawyers. Lawyers and engineers are notorious for that because their job is to analyze the world, or people who are naturally skeptical, or maybe even skittish, or just people who are detail oriented. They want to get things right, especially people. Well, I won't go into the long list of types of people, but at any rate, it does happen. And the thing I suggest for people like yourself who fall into potentially one of those categories would be to just relax and let the pilot fly the plane. Just like when you get on a plane, and though you may want to take control, you're not going to. The pilot's going to fly the plane no matter what. And that's what's going on in hypnosis. The hypnotherapist who's recorded the recording or who is seeing you live in the session is in charge of it. You don't have to do anything. You're like the person flying on the plane. Now, some people think their job is to worry about the flight. That's not even their job. Their job is to sit back and relax, and they can even go to sleep if they want, and when they wake up, they'll be where they want to be. So that's what I say to people in that situation. You do not need to pay attention to anything that's being said. It's for your subconscious mind, and you can just relax and check out.
And with hypnosis, we've talked a lot about how it can change your behavior, so you maybe you can stop calling in the context of relationships, and this interview series, maybe you'll stop calling your ex so much, or you'll stop worrying about these things so much. But can it also help to alter our mindset? So if we're someone who we recognize that we often play the victim in our relationships, or we recognize that we're often the aggressor, or anything like that, where it's really about the way we're thinking, can it help to alter that as well, not on a deeper level than just behaviors, but really how we see ourselves and how we view ourselves, how we feel about ourselves?
Oh, absolutely. It can completely change your perception of yourself, and that's a lot of it. I just call that confidence. So when I work with someone in my office, I always work in the first session on confidence. Even if they just want one session, I'll make sure the early part of the session is confidence. I've got to build them up. So yeah, it can absolutely help you in a relationship to stop calling that person. And by the way, my advice on that is very simple. I'm not a relationship coach, but I'm almost 50, so I know a thing or two. Whatever you chase will run from you. So if you want something to come to you, stop chasing it. So if anyone is calling their ex consistently and producing no results from it, just ease off, let them come to you. Or not, because maybe they don't want to, and that's fine too. And then at least you learn something about it. But yes, hypnosis can help you with all of that.
And another thing that just came to mind in thinking about hypnosis is one of my favorite movies, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, starring Jim Carrey. It's not about hypnosis, but it is about.
No, it's not about hypnosis. But I know that a lot of people when they think about, and it's kind of on the rise with more and more people using hypnosis to work their way through a breakup, and that's one of the things that people sometimes think they'll get from hypnosis is that they'll be able to kind of erase this past with this person, or erase the pain completely. And is that something? How do you address that to let people know that it's not about Or is it? Is it about erasing the pain, or is it about getting through that pain so that you can move on?
Well, for example, in my program, Bad Relationship Memory Eraser, I that's happened so often that people request that we actually created a program for that. And then what I do in there is I first of all address the idea that it's not really the bad relationships that people remember necessarily. It's something that they really enjoyed for whatever, and even if it was something they enjoyed that wasn't ultimately good for them, it's something they wanted to be in. And a lot of the painful memories are good memories for them. And sometimes they're legitimately good memories, going out for ice cream, going to the movies, coming home with that person, being with that person, just watching TV, wearing pajamas with that person, whatever it may be. So what I do in that instance is I use a very simple technique from neuro-linguistic programming, which is to scramble that memory. Because they have certain memories of them with that person. It was wonderful. And we tend to over-romanticize the past. So even if it was a not-so-good relationship, we'll find those few little parts in the memory, and we'll think the whole thing was like that. And gosh, I really miss them. I want to go back to them to have those good times. And they'll dismiss the 80% that was horrible. So in those situations, that's why I call it the bad relationship memory eraser. So what we want to do is take those instances that were wonderful and just scramble them a little bit and make them funny and just to make them silly, but not make them romantic and loving. And we're taking the charge away from them, because that's what pulls people back to a partner that's not really good for them, those few memories. So in a sense, that is very similar to the movie that you mentioned, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, because in that movie, they have a machine that goes in and zaps memories away and just gets rid of them. And it has varying degrees of success. Sometimes it's only partial zapping and the memory's still kind of intact. And that's what, of course, makes the movie so interesting. And it's a wonderful movie. So in hypnosis, that's kind of what we do, except we're not saying we're zapping it and erasing it. As you mentioned, we are changing it so it's not pulling them back to something that's not good for them.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you for explaining that.
Sure.
Because I know that, I'm sure so many people have considered hypnotherapy when going through just a terrible breakup and trying to figure out how to heal from that and how to let that go. Now, when someone comes to you to get over an ex-lover or to get over a bad relationship, whatever that might be, and they come to you for I don't know how many sessions, is it usually a permanent solution, or do they have to kind of do some upkeep once they've gone through a number of sessions and they say that they're feeling good, they feel like they can move on? Do they tend to fall back into old patterns if they don't maintain it in some way?
The ones who don't recognize that this is them causing it and that it's something that's been developing over their entire lifetime, the ones who don't realize that have the challenges. The ones who I can get through to and just in a conversational way before we even start the hypnosis, because you need to have an intellectual understanding of it as well in order to deal with it moment to moment. So in my theory, I guess we can say it is, even though I believe it's fact, but we'll go with theory. My theory is that we look for certain types of people based on experiences that we have early on in life. For example, my mom died when I was 6. That really happened. And so I was looking for a motherly type lady. And until I dealt with that, until I got that out of my system, a motherly lady is fine, but if you're pushing it to the excess, you expect her to do everything and, things like that, like a child would want, that's not really conducive to a relationship. So I had to work on that. And it wasn't a matter of me with this one person making this mistake, if you will. It was the programming that I had from early on that was causing me to always look for this type of person. That's what I had to deal with. So the people who can recognize that in themselves and take responsibility themselves are able to do much better than those who do not go down that path.
So it sounds like when and I think that most people who are listening to this, they're listening because they are at that place where they're ready to take responsibility for themselves and then do the healing. And that seems to be very key to make hypnosis successful and to make sure that it's long lasting.
Yeah, in that regard, yes. Now, sometimes we can just go in and change something, rewire something in someone's mind, and it's a very straightforward process. But in something like this, there has to be that cognitive, conscious, intellectual recognition of, hey, this is just the same person again. This is the same person with a different name, and they look a little different, but it's basically the same person I was just with. That didn't work out. I'm just going into the same exact thing again. So I know that this isn't going to work out either. I've got to change the type of person that I'm going after because I am changing. I have new ways of interacting with the world. I value myself differently now. I'm clear on my goals now. I realize that this type of person is not what I want long term. I need to look for this other type of person. And sometimes it's a struggle. You know, it's so easy to get that type of person over and over and over because that's what you've been doing for so long. But when you change it to the type of person you should be with, you know, it's a little bit of a struggle. So that's why the cognitive recognition of that person really helps out.
Yeah. And thank you for explaining that so well, because I think sometimes, and I know the first time that I had hypnotherapy, I just kind of put it over in the hypnotherapist's hands, thinking, okay, this is your job to deal with this. But you really explain it well, that it's still ultimately our responsibility to make these decisions, to be aware of what's happening, and to open ourselves up to hypnotherapy so that we can really reap all of the benefits from it. Thank you so much for sharing that and for explaining so well how hypnotherapy can work in our relationships. I really enjoyed having you on today, and I understand you have a free gift for us that can really help us to start making some changes in our relationships and creating the relationships that we want. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I do have a free hypnosis recording on my website, stevegjones.com, and it's designed to help you get in touch with what I call your inner millionaire, which is that part of you that has the potential to bring out your possibility and share your gift with the world and make some money off it, because you then have a career path that really motivates you. So again, that's available at stevegjones.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And you guys will also get the link to that when you get this recording, so you don't have to remember exactly where to go. You'll be able to click on stevegjones.com directly from your email. Once again, Dr. Jones, thank you so much for joining us today. Before you go, any final last words of wisdom that we should keep in mind when it comes to hypnosis?
Well, Alicia, first of all, thank you very much for having me. Thanks for letting me share the word of the subconscious mind, just the power that we have. And I'd like to leave everyone with this, which is from the musical group America, and they sang a song about the Wizard of Oz. And the words to this song say, Oz never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. And what that speaks to is the idea that when the Wizard of Oz was giving out all these gifts at the end of the movie and sharing these things with everyone, they weren't things that these characters didn't have already. They already had them. So it's the same thing with hypnosis. I wouldn't be giving you anything that you don't have already, and hypnosis doesn't give you anything you don't have already. It just reminds you of how beautiful and amazing and powerful and wonderful you already are.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you. That was
My
a great
pleasure.
reminder.
You are listening to an interview with clinical hypnotherapist Dr. Steve G. Jones. For a free hypnosis download, please visit stevegjones.com.